The night howled with sirens, but her calm step forward silenced the chaos around her. What kind of soldier walked like that, unhurried, almost fragile, while others scrambled, shouted, and prayed they weren't the first name on the casualty list? No one knew her story. They only knew her silence. She carried no swagger, no need to prove herself, just a steady rhythm in her boots as if she had walked through worse storms before this one. And she had, though no one asked and she never told. The mission briefing stuttered through static over the cracked speakers. Men leaned in, scribbling notes, faces lit by the hum of cheap fluorescent lights. She sat at the end of the table, slightly apart, hands folded, eyes steady. Not a single question, not a single wasted word. Some thought she didn't belong, others thought she was dangerous, a few thought both, but no one dared say it aloud. Because when the sirens screamed again, she didn't flinch. She stood, adjusted her pack, and walked toward the exit as if she had been waiting her whole life for this one call. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The convoy smelled of diesel and iron. Soldiers climbed into the back of trucks, slamming rifles against metal walls, the sound too sharp in the quiet between alarms. Everyone was talking, covering nerves with chatter. She said nothing. She sat near the back, eyes drifting past the open flap of the truck to the night that swallowed them whole. One soldier, barely 20, tried to joke. "So Echo 7, huh? You don't say much, do you?" She didn't answer, just shifted her rifle, the motion slow, deliberate. His smile faltered. Another soldier nudged him, muttering, "Leave it, man." But inside, she felt the weight of his words. "You don't say much." No, she didn't, because words couldn't fix what had already been lost. She closed her eyes for a moment, and in the darkness it all came back. The smell of burning, the taste of ash, a voice on the radio that cut out before finishing its last word, a silence that had stretched so loud it had buried itself in her chest forever. Her hands clenched tighter around her rifle. When the truck jolted to a stop, she opened her eyes, calm again, controlled, but inside the storm raged. The mission was simple on paper, they always were. A facility, hostile presence, retrieve intel, extract clean. But paper never told the truth. Paper didn't show the smell of mud, the way your lungs burned after sprinting uphill under weight, the sound of your own blood pounding louder than the gunfire around you. Paper didn't account for fear or guilt or memory. The squad spread out along the ridge. Wind whipped through the valley below, carrying the faint hum of machinery. Floodlights swept in rhythm, cutting through fog. Somewhere in the dark, men with rifles waited for them. The captain raised a fist. The squad froze, eyes darted, breaths held. They were close, too close. She lowered herself against the earth, cheek pressed to damp soil, heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the land. Her scope caught movement, a shadow crossing light. Just one man, guard duty, nothing special. But her finger paused over the trigger. Because in her head that shadow wasn't a stranger, it was someone else, someone she couldn't save. The captain hissed through comms, "Echo 7, take the shot." She didn't move, didn't breathe. The shadow shifted again, almost lazily, as if unaware death had already looked its way. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Why now? Why tonight? Why him? Her chest tightened, memory clawing against her control. She forced her finger down, the rifle barked. The shadow crumpled, silence followed. "Good shot," the captain muttered. But she didn't feel it, didn't believe it. Because the echo in her chest whispered otherwise, too late, always too late. They moved forward one step at a time, silence layered with fear, each soldier caught in their own thoughts, though no one admitted it. She stayed at the edge of the formation, eyes scanning, every breath measured. A whisper drifted from behind her, two men, voices low. "They say she lost her whole unit once." "Yeah, heard it was worse, heard she walked out alone." She didn't react, didn't turn, let them talk, let the stories twist her silence into myth. But the truth was sharper, heavier. She hadn't walked out, she had crawled. Mud in her teeth, smoke in her lungs, dragging herself past the dead faces of friends she couldn't carry. Her survival hadn't been bravery, it had been punishment. And punishment doesn't end. She glanced at the youngest soldier again, the one who had tried to joke in the truck. His jaw was tight, hands shaking slightly as he gripped his weapon. She saw herself in him, saw fear fighting against duty, saw the weight of being too young in a place that demanded too much. She wanted to tell him something, anything, that he would be okay, that the night wouldn't last forever, but her throat closed around the words. Because she didn't believe them herself. Minutes stretched into hours, every sound felt louder, every shadow felt alive. Finally, the facility loomed ahead, concrete walls, rusted gates, floodlights sweeping like restless eyes, a fortress in the fog. The squad crouched low, the captain whispered orders, voice clipped, precise. She checked her rifle again, her breathing slowed, focused. And yet her hand trembled just slightly. She clenched it tight, forcing the tremor away. No one noticed, no one ever did. But inside, she wondered how much longer she could keep carrying this storm alone. The first shots cracked the night, muzzle flashes lit the fog, men shouted, scrambled, fell. The air burned with gunpowder and fear. She moved like water, precise, fluid, calm on the outside. Every pull of the trigger was steady, every step calculated. But inside, the voice roared. Too late, too late. Every man she dropped became another ghost added to the weight already crushing her chest. Every flash of light became a memory of fire, of loss, of faces she couldn't forget. And then, Echo 7 left flank. She turned, saw movement, a muzzle rising, too fast, too close. The young soldier, the one with shaking hands, stood frozen, eyes wide. Without thinking, she moved. A burst from her rifle cut the enemy down. The boy stumbled back, gasping, alive only because of her. He looked at her, fear, shock, and something else flickering in his eyes. Gratitude or maybe guilt. She didn't return the look. She just turned away, scanning for the next threat. But her chest burned. Because saving him meant remembering the ones she hadn't. When the gunfire faded, when the shouts quieted, when the smoke cleared, the squad held the ground. The facility was theirs, the intel secured. On paper, the mission was a success. But sitting on the cold concrete, rifle across her knees, she didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow. The others laughed weakly, shared cigarettes, tried to shake off the weight. She sat alone, staring into the dark. Her silence pressed heavy against them all. One soldier finally asked, voice soft, almost afraid, "Why don't you ever talk?" She didn't answer. Because the truth was too heavy for words. And because she knew the night wasn't done with them yet. Not by a long shot. Why did the colonel avoid her eyes? Why did his voice falter when he said her call sign? Echo 7 will take point. A ripple moved through the squad, men exchanged glances, Echo 7 her. No one wanted to be near her when the bullets started singing. Not because she couldn't fight, because she could, too well. The silence that followed was heavier than the air. He didn't explain why, didn't justify it. He just gave the order and moved on, as though the weight of that single choice didn't shift the entire mood of the room. She checked her rifle, calm fingers sliding along familiar metal. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge the whispers that buzzed low, sharp, like hornets circling the air. But in her chest, her heartbeat wasn't calm. It was sharp, heavy, like a fist pounding against a locked door. She remembered another night, different sirens, different chaos. That time she hadn't silenced it, that time she had been too late. The memory was a scar, one she never showed. It didn't bleed anymore, but it burned every time someone trusted her with a position like this. Every time she heard take point, she heard instead, if you fail again, they'll all follow you into the dark. She swallowed it, locked it down. The squad gathered their gear, metal clinked, straps tightened, magazines checked. Each soldier had a ritual, a rhythm that calmed the hands, steadied the breath. One kissed a crucifix tied to his wrist. Another rubbed his wedding band 3 times against his vest. Small, human gestures in the shadow of war. Her ritual was silence, always silence. The convoy roared to life. Dust swirled, headlights cut through mist. Engines growled against the night like restless beasts chained together. She climbed into the lead vehicle, her pack heavy against her shoulders, her rifle settled across her knees. The youngest soldier, the one whose hands had shaken earlier, ended up across from her. His eyes darted to hers and away again, as though staring too long would draw something out of him he wasn't ready to face. She studied him for a second, the lines of fear across his face. The way he tapped his boot against the truck floor too fast, betraying nerves. He had someone waiting for him, she guessed. The way he clutched the photo earlier, holding it like an anchor. First deployment, she asked, her voice low, even. He blinked, surprised she had spoken at all, then nodded. Yeah, his throat worked. You. Her gaze lingered on him for a beat, then she looked away, back to the night spilling past the truck's open flap. Not my first. She didn't say how many, didn't say what it had cost. Some truths weren't meant to be shared. The silence stretched, he shifted, uncomfortable, then forced a smile. Guess that means I'm in good hands, right? She didn't answer, couldn't, because in her mind another face stared back, one she hadn't saved. The truck jolted, throwing them side to side. She gripped the bench, steadied herself, buried the ghost again. But the boy's smile faded at her silence. He looked down at his boots, and she hated herself for not being able to give him even that small comfort. They dismounted half a mile from the facility. Boots sank into wet soil. The night air was sharp with the scent of rain-soaked earth and engine oil. Orders hissed through comms, formation spread, watch the ridges, stay sharp. They moved in shadows, rifles raised, each step deliberate. The moon bled pale light across the valley, silver on steel, silver on skin. She took point as ordered, eyes scanning every shift of fog, every crack of branch under weight. Her ears caught everything, the hiss of wind, the scrape of gear, the unsteady breath of the boy behind her. And beneath it all, her own heartbeat, too loud, too steady, not from calm but from force. She had trained it into control, but inside the storm was always there. At the ridge, she dropped low, signaling halt. Through her scope, the facility sharpened into view, fences topped with wire, towers with sweeping beams of light, silhouettes moving along walls. It wasn't a fortress, not really, but to the men beside her it looked like one, and fear had a way of turning shadows into giants. Echo 7, the captain's voice crackled, report. Her finger hovered over the comm. For a moment her throat closed, words caught in memory. She forced them out, 2 guards on north wall, floodlights rotating 30 seconds, east approach clear. Her voice was calm, measured, the kind of tone that steadied others. The captain responded, copy, we move on your mark. Her mark, her choice, her burden. She exhaled slowly. The beam of light swept, paused, swept again. She waited for the rhythm, the gap. Go, she whispered. And like shadows unchained, they moved. Every soldier carried fear differently. Some pressed it down until it burned them hollow. Some filled it with noise, chatter, anything to drown the silence. Some pretended it didn't exist, hiding behind anger or bravado. She carried it by owning it, feeling every sharp edge of it, turning it into focus, into something that couldn't be ignored. But tonight it pressed heavier. Each step toward the facility walls pulled memory tighter around her chest. Another mission, another unit trusting her, another chance to fail them. Her hand brushed against her vest pocket, felt the folded paper inside. She always carried it, though no one knew. A name written on it, just one, a name that had never left her. She closed her eyes briefly as they reached the wall, pressed her forehead against the cold concrete, a quiet prayer no one would hear. Then she signaled. The climb was silent but brutal. Gloves gripped wire, cutters snapped through metal. Each man pulled himself up over down, boots hit soil with soft thuds. She landed last, scanned, moved forward. The first guard fell before he even realized he'd been seen. Her rifle coughed once, muzzle flash hidden by the dark. He crumpled soundlessly. The others spread out, moving in pairs, covering doors, securing angles. Her path led deeper, toward the heart of the facility. And as she walked, the boy followed her. His breath was ragged, too loud, his steps too quick. She wanted to tell him to slow down, to breathe, but her throat locked again. They passed a corridor, light flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled with static, then cut. The boy whispered, this place feels wrong. She didn't answer, but she agreed. Because something in the air pressed heavy, too quiet, too still. It wasn't supposed to be this easy. Then came the sound. A door slammed, boots rushed, voices shouted in a language thick with fury. The ambush hit before they could set their footing. Gunfire exploded down the corridor, muzzle flashes strobed the dark, metal rang, walls shook, dust poured from the ceiling. The squad scattered, returning fire, voices shouting over comms. She shoved the boy against the wall, body shielding his as bullets screamed past. He looked at her, eyes wide, lips trembling. Stay here, she said, the first clear order she'd given him. Then she moved. Her rifle was an extension of her body, every squeeze of the trigger precise, controlled. Men fell, shadows dropped. But there were too many, too close. She ducked behind cover, breath steady but heart pounding. The storm inside pressed harder, louder. She felt the old memory clawing up again. Another night, another ambush, another time she hadn't saved them all. She clenched her jaw, not again. A grenade clattered across the floor. Without hesitation, she kicked it back. The blast tore the hallway apart, smoke and dust swallowing everything. The squad regrouped, coughing, battered but alive. The boy stumbled toward her, still shaking. You saved me again. She didn't respond, just looked past him deeper into the dark halls. Because she knew this wasn't over. The facility wasn't just guarded, it was waiting for them. And she carried the weight of knowing that every step forward could be the one that repeated her past. Who pulled the alarms, who knew they were coming? The question burned through every mind as the smoke cleared. Sirens wailed inside the facility now, sharper than the ones outside, like a throat screaming from steel walls. Lights blazed alive, flooding corridors in harsh white. She raised a fist, halt. The squad froze, the boy behind her stilled, breath still ragged, eyes wide. Through the ringing silence, her ears caught the echo of boots hammering metal stairs, closing fast. She lowered her rifle, steadied it against her shoulder, her breath slowed, every sense sharpened. The storm in her chest didn't fade, but it bent, harnessed into focus. Figures appeared through the haze. She fired first, 3 fell. The squad unleashed a wave behind her, the corridor shaking with fury. But it wasn't victory, it was survival for now. And yet under the noise, one thought stabbed her sharper than any bullet. Someone wanted this. Someone wanted them here. The captain barked orders through comms. Secondary entrance compromised, adjust formation, Echo 7 clear the east wing. Of course, her always forward, always first. She didn't argue, just signaled two others to follow. The boy trailed, unasked but unwilling to be left behind. The corridor twisted, narrow and dim. Pipes rattled overhead, dripping rust and water. The air stank of chemicals, sharp enough to sting the throat. Her boots splashed through shallow puddles. Each step echoed too loud, too exposed. One soldier muttered, "Feels like a trap." She said nothing, but in her gut she knew he was right. They reached a steel door, half-rusted, marked with warning symbols in a language none of them fully understood. The boy glanced at her. "What is this place?" She didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because she did. She'd seen this design before, years ago, on maps they were never supposed to find, in files they were never supposed to read. Her stomach tightened. She had thought those files were lies, old rumors wrapped in paranoia, but the steel before her said otherwise. "Open it," one of the soldiers urged, nerves cracking his voice. She hesitated, palm brushing the cold surface. A shiver climbed her spine. Because she wasn't sure what scared her more, what was behind the door, or what opening it would prove right about her past. The hinges groaned, the door swung wide. The smell hit first, not decay, not blood, but something sterile, chemical, suffocating. Lights flickered overhead, revealing rows of cages, not for animals, not for storage. For people. Empty now, but the sight carved into every eye that saw it. The boy whispered, "What the hell?" His voice cracked. She scanned the room, jaw tight. Scattered papers, overturned trays, shackles still bolted to floors. One soldier gagged, backing away. Another swore under his breath, fury mixing with fear. Her silence deepened. Because she had seen something like this before, too many years ago, too far away from this place, a secret base, a unit that never came home. And she remembered being told to forget, to bury it, to act like it never existed. But it had followed her here like a ghost. Her fingers brushed a scrap of paper on the floor, scrawled writing, rushed, desperate. "We are not experiments, we are soldiers too." Her chest tightened, she closed her fist around it. The boy stepped closer, voice trembling. "What is this? Did we know about this?" She didn't answer, she couldn't. The storm inside her was breaking open, threatening to spill. If she told them what she knew, the mission would collapse. Orders would fracture. Men would lose faith not just in command, but in everything holding them together. So she stayed silent. Her silence was protection. But the boy's eyes searched hers, demanding something, anything. And she hated herself again for giving him nothing. The captain's voice cut sharp through comms. Echo 7 status. She forced her voice steady. East wing clear, moving to next sector. A lie, not clear, never clear. But the mission had to go on. She led them out, closing the steel door behind her, sealing away what they weren't supposed to see. The boy lingered, staring at it, then at her. His jaw clenched. He knew, not everything, but enough to feel the crack. And in that moment, she saw the danger. Not from the enemy waiting in the shadows, but from the truth she carried. The firefight found them again 2 quarters later. Shadows burst from hidden alcoves, rifles spitting fire. The squad dropped low, returning in a storm of muzzle flashes. She moved like instinct, swift, precise, merciless. The boy hesitated, hands shaking again. His shots went wide, ricocheting off walls. A hostile rushed him, blade flashing. He froze. Her rifle barked. The man collapsed inches from the boy's chest. She grabbed his vest, yanked him back. "Focus," she hissed, eyes burning into his. He nodded frantically, but tears shimmered at the edges of his vision. She let go, turned back to the fight, kept moving. But the image seared into her, his fear, his fragility. He wasn't ready for this. He shouldn't have been here. And it made her question, for the 1000th time, if she should be. When the gunfire died, the squad regrouped in a dim control room. Screens flickered, casting pale light across exhausted faces. The captain scanned maps, muttering orders. The others reloaded, drank water, stretched aching limbs. She sat in the corner, back against cold steel, staring at nothing. Her rifle across her knees, her fingers drumming against it unconsciously. The boy approached, hesitating, then sat beside her. For a long time he said nothing, just breath, slow, shaky. Finally he whispered, "Why don't you ever talk?" She didn't answer. Silence was easier, safer. But he kept looking at her, waiting. And something cracked. Her voice was quiet, barely audible, because words don't bring them back. His brow furrowed. "Who?" She looked at him, eyes sharp, haunted, then away again. You don't want to know. He swallowed hard, staring at the floor, and in his silence she felt his fear grow heavier. Not of the enemy, of her. The captain's voice snapped the tension. We've got movement in the lower levels, intel's there, we move in 10. Everyone stood, shoulders heavy, weapons heavier. She rose last, adjusted her gear, hit her storm again. But the boy's gaze lingered on her, and she knew the silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of questions she wasn't ready to answer, and full of truths she could never bury forever. As they moved toward the stairwell, alarms blaring, lights pulsing red now, she felt it in her bones. This mission wasn't about intel anymore. It was about ghosts. And ghosts never stayed buried. Not here. Not with her. Not tonight. She didn't see the blast coming, no one did. 1 second the convoy was rolling steady, headlights stretching like weak candles across the dust, and the next the road ripped open with a roar that swallowed sound and air alike. Metal screamed, the ground jumped, the truck ahead folded in on itself like a crushed can, then silence, heavy and wrong. She was thrown sideways, shoulders slamming into the steel wall of her vehicle. The impact snapped her breath away, but not her focus. Her ears rang, the high-pitched whine like needles threading through her skull. She blinked through dust, through smoke, through the blur of headlights now cutting across chaos. A fireball licked at the night sky, swallowing shapes of men she had spoken to minutes before. Why wasn't she panicking? She didn't know. Training, maybe. Or maybe it was something deeper, the part of her that had lived through darker nights years before the uniform. She forced air into her lungs, steady and slow, anchoring herself against the tide of fear. Around her, voices rose, some calling for help, some lost in screams that didn't sound human anymore. She pushed herself upright. Her rifle was still strapped across her chest, dust caking the sight. She wiped it with the back of her glove. Her hands didn't shake, not yet. Move, get a cover, the squad leader's voice cut through, hoarse and sharp. But she didn't move toward cover. She moved forward, toward the wreck, toward the men caught in that fear. Her boots pounded broken asphalt, every step punching the earth as if it could absorb her weight. The air burned with chemical smoke, acrid and bitter. Shapes flickered, flames twisting shadows across twisted steel. She reached the first body. His helmet was gone, eyes wide and glassy in the firelight. She knelt, pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Nothing, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. There wasn't time to grieve, not here. She looked toward the next truck, flames crawling over its frame, ammunition cooking off with sharp cracks. And then she heard it, faint, weak, a voice caught between smoke and silence. Help here. She turned, saw a hand, bloody, trembling, poking out from the wreckage. She didn't think. She dropped her rifle, slid down, and dug with her bare hands, pulling twisted shards of metal away. The heat seared her palms through her gloves, but she didn't stop. Inch by inch, she freed the soldier, his face covered in soot, his chest heaving with shallow, ragged breaths. His eyes found hers, and in them fear, confusion, trust. He clung to her gaze as though it was the only thing keeping him from slipping away. I've got you, she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm around them. You're not alone. She pulled him clear, dragging him across the rough ground. Every muscle in her arms screamed, her lungs fighting the smoke. She thought of her brother then, the way his last words had hung in her memory, sharp and unfinished. She had promised herself she'd never let someone die reaching for a hand that wasn't there. Behind her, the squad regrouped, weapons scanning the horizon for the threat they all knew was waiting. Every shadow was a question, every silence a trap. She dragged the soldier behind the burned-out husk of another truck where medics scrambled with frantic hands. You saved him, one of them breathed, eyes wide, sweat streaking through the grime on his face. She didn't answer, she just looked back at the wreck where flames still clawed at the night. There were others she hadn't reached, voices she hadn't answered. And in the pit of her chest, guilt pressed sharp and merciless. She could hear the echoes, her mother's voice trembling over a phone line years ago, asking her why she needed to go back, why she couldn't stay home and be safe. This was the answer, not words, not explanations, just this, running into fire when everyone else hesitated. The squad leader grabbed her shoulder. We've got to move now. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the fire one moment longer. Then she picked up her rifle, the steel warm against her gloves, and fell in with the others. The night swallowed them again, sirens and gunfire trailing like ghosts. The soldier she had saved lay behind them now, his life clinging to fragile breaths. But there was something she hadn't told anyone, not yet. Because when she had looked into his eyes, she had seen more than fear. She had seen recognition. And that terrified her more than the fire ever could. The dust hadn't even settled when the ambush began. First came the crack of rifles, sharp, distant, impossible to place in the darkness. Then the whine of rounds slashing the air, sparking against metal, ricocheting into the night. The convoy scattered, men diving for whatever cover was left. The fire from the blast still painted the road in a sick orange glow, casting every shadow long and jagged, turning the enemy into ghosts no one could see. She slid behind the shell of an overturned truck, her rifle braced tight against her shoulder. The weapon felt heavier tonight, not in weight but in consequence. Her finger hovered near the trigger, steady, controlled, though her chest pounded as if her ribs couldn't contain it. She scanned the ridgeline, eyes narrowing against the haze. "Where the hell are they?" someone shouted, voice breaking through the chaos. That was the problem, they weren't visible. Whoever set the trap knew this terrain, knew how to vanish in it, how to turn silence into terror. She exhaled, slow and even. She'd learned years ago, fear narrows your sight, makes the world too small. Breathe and the edges return, breathe and you see what panic hides. And then she saw it, a flicker, faint but real, just beyond the flames, a muzzle flash, then another. Her rifle barked, the recoil nudged her shoulder, familiar, grounding. Someone dropped on the ridge. For a heartbeat, the battlefield fell quieter, like the night itself was holding its breath. Then another wave of fire answered, a storm of bullets tearing through the smoke. The soldier she'd pulled from the wreck lay not far behind her, propped up by a medic who whispered urgent reassurances. His eyes stayed on her, even through the pain, and she couldn't shake it, the way recognition had burned in them earlier. Why had he looked at her like that, like he knew her, or worse, like he knew something about her? The thought gnawed at the edges of her focus, but she shoved it down, survival first, questions later. The squad leader crawled up beside her, face streaked with grime, eyes sharp. "We're pinned. If we don't move, they'll bleed us dry." She nodded, options unfolded in her mind, each one razor-edged. A push through the kill zone, a retreat into the dark, or her gut whispered it, something they wouldn't expect. She glanced at the burning wreck again, the flames still climbing higher, the smoke thick enough to blind. It was a wall, a shield if they used it right. "I'll move," she said quietly. The leader frowned. "Move where?" "Through the fire." He shook his head, almost laughing. "That's suicide." "Not if they don't see me." And before he could stop her, she was already shifting, crawling low, the heat from the wreck searing her back as she slipped around the twisted metal. The smoke clawed at her lungs, bitter and choking, but it hid her, swallowed her shape, muffled her steps. Every sense screamed at her to stop, to go back, but another voice pushed her forward. Her brother's voice. The memory of the last night she saw him, standing in the doorway, telling her she was the only one strong enough to walk where others broke. He hadn't survived his war, but maybe she could survive hers. She emerged from the smoke, a phantom against the flames. The ridge loomed ahead, dark and jagged, enemy silhouettes dancing just beyond. They fired blindly into the convoy, certain they had the upper hand. They didn't see her yet. She raised her rifle, breath steady, heart calm, one squeeze then another. Shadows fell, their weapons clattering against stone. She moved like she'd trained 1,000 times, but this wasn't training. This was survival sharpened to a knife's edge, and in the strange clarity of it, she wasn't afraid, not of bullets, not of fire. The only thing that scared her was the thought of failing, leaving behind promises unkept, lives she could have saved. The ridge quieted piece by piece until the firing slowed, then stopped. Silence stretched, heavy, dangerous. She held still, listening, waiting. Then a voice rose from the dark, harsh and accented. She couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone, orders, movement. More were coming. She pulled back, slipping once more into the smoke, the fire wrapping around her like a cloak. By the time she returned to the convoy, her squad was staring, wide-eyed, stunned, as if she'd walked out of death itself. "What the hell did you just do?" the leader asked. She didn't answer, not with words. She just checked her rifle, reloaded, and glanced back at the medic tending the wounded soldier. His gaze found hers again, sharper now, clearer despite the pain. And then he said it, low, almost broken, but enough. "I know who you are." The words froze her where she stood. No one here should know, no one here could know. Her calm cracked for the first time that night. Because if he was right, if he truly knew, then everything she had buried, everything she had sworn to leave behind, was about to surface in the worst place possible. Why did those 5 words hit her harder than the bullets? "I know who you are." The medic tried to hush him, pressing gauze against the wound in his side, whispering for him to save his strength, but the soldier's eyes never left her. Blood smeared his lips, his chest rose and fell in shallow stutters, yet there was something unbroken in his stare. Recognition, certainty. She crouched beside him, the chaos of the battlefield muffling into a low hum around them. "You don't know me," she said softly, steady, though inside her pulse raced. His hand twitched toward hers, trembling with effort. "I remember," he rasped. A shadow of her past flickered through her mind. A name, a place, a moment she had locked away. She swallowed hard, not here, not now. This wasn't the time for ghosts, but ghosts never asked permission. They came when they wanted. The squad leader barked orders, pulling the rest of the team into defensive positions. "We've got movement on both flanks. They're circling us." His voice cracked through the smoke. She forced herself up, forcing distance between herself and the wounded man's words. Duty first, truth later. She positioned herself at the edge of the convoy's wreckage, sight sweeping the ridgeline again. Every bush was an enemy, every shadow was alive. The night was breathing against them, heavy and hostile. Still, his voice lingered in her head. "I know who you are." Her throat tightened. Did he know about the mission years ago, the one no one was supposed to walk away from? Did he know what she'd done to survive it, or who she'd left behind in the process? A flare hissed into the sky, turning night into blinding white. For a second, the battlefield unfolded like a frozen photograph. Dozens of enemy fighters pouring down the slopes, weapons raised, faces hard and merciless. The light burned her eyes, but it gave her one gift: clarity. They had seconds, maybe less. The squad leader swore, "We can't hold this line." She thought fast. The convoy was shredded. Ammunition was running low. Their only chance was to move fast and in the one direction the enemy wouldn't expect, through the canyon ahead. But the canyon wasn't safety. It was narrow, claustrophobic, a perfect place for another ambush. To go there meant trusting chance. To stay here meant certain death. She caught the squad leader's eye. He saw it in her face before she even spoke. "We move," she said. He hesitated, torn between his orders and the look in her eyes. Then he nodded. Sometimes survival demanded faith more than strategy. They gathered the wounded, hoisting bodies onto shoulders, weapons slung but ready. The medic clung to the soldier she'd saved, whispering to keep him conscious. His gaze still found her in the chaos, and she hated herself for it because part of her wanted to look back, wanted to hear what else he thought he knew. Instead, she turned her focus forward, toward the canyon. The squad broke into a run, boots pounding the broken road, every step rattling her bones. Gunfire erupted behind them, chasing them into the dark. Bullets tore through the air, sparks snapping off stone. A man cried out, stumbled, was caught by two others who refused to let him fall. No one could afford to be left behind, not tonight. Her lungs burned as they reached the canyon's mouth. The air funneled between the cliffs, cooler but sharp, carrying echoes of their footsteps. The walls loomed close, too close, the moonlight barely reaching into the cut of stone. She felt the weight of it pressing down, the trap it could so easily become. Her mind whispered the questions she tried to silence. Why did that soldier recognize her? What did he think he knew? And why, after all the miles she had put between herself and the past, was it following her here into the fire? She pushed the thoughts aside. She had to. Survival first, always. Still in the quiet of the canyon, with only the sound of boots and ragged breaths, another thought crept in, one she couldn't shake. What if the past wasn't chasing her? What if it had been waiting? The canyon stretched ahead, a tunnel of stone and shadow, and with every step she felt the weight of something unseen pressing closer. Something she hadn't told them. Not yet. What broke first, the silence or her trust in it? The canyon walls pressed closer with every step, turning their retreat into a funnel of echoes. Boots scraped stone, gear rattled, the hiss of strained breaths filled the narrow air. She walked near the rear of the column, rifle steady, eyes flicking between the high ridges. Every instinct screamed the same truth: this place was wrong. Too quiet, too deliberate. And yet, for a few fleeting moments, the gunfire behind them faded into distance. No more flashes, no more shadows at their backs, just the canyon swallowing them whole. The medic struggled under the weight of the wounded soldier, the same man she had pulled from fire. His head lolled, but his eyes cracked open, searching, always searching for her. She wished he wouldn't look at her like that. It was as if his stare peeled back the layers she had built, brick by brick, over years of silence. When the medic stumbled, she was already there, slipping under the soldier's arm, shouldering his weight without a word. He was lighter than she expected, too light. "You shouldn't," the medic began. "I can handle him," she cut in, voice flat. The soldier's breath rasped near her ear, broken words spilled out, fragments more than sentences. "You didn't leave that night." Her blood froze, her grip tightened without meaning to. She didn't answer, couldn't, not here, not with the canyon listening. A sharp whistle cut through the air, everyone froze. The sound bounced off the cliffs, impossible to pin down. Then came the answering chorus, clicks metallic and cruel from above. Ambush. Muzzle flashes erupted along the ridges. The canyon lit in strobes of fire and shadow. Bullets screamed down like hailstones, chipping stone, tearing flesh. A man cried out and dropped, clutching his leg. Chaos surged, but there was nowhere to scatter. The walls penned them in. "Cover, find cover," the squad leader shouted, though there was none to find. She dragged the wounded soldier against the canyon wall, pressing herself over him as the storm rained down. Rocks shattered inches from her head, dust choking her lungs. Her heart thundered, but her mind split, sharp and cold. There had to be a way. She scanned the cliffs, eyes darting between the brief flares of muzzle fire. They had high ground. The squad was exposed. If they stayed, they'd all be erased. Her gut twisted with the truth she didn't want to face. Someone had given them up. Someone had known the convoy's route, known their fallback. This wasn't chance. This was a message. The soldier beneath her coughed, blood on his lips. His hand weakly caught her sleeve. "Not an accident," he whispered. "They wanted you here." Her chest constricted. No, he couldn't know that. Couldn't possibly know the weight she carried, the file stamped and buried, the operation no one spoke about anymore. And yet his eyes burned with certainty. She shoved the thought aside, later, survival first, always. She spotted it then, a break in the wall ahead, a jagged cut where the cliff had collapsed years ago. A way up, dangerous, exposed, but their only chance. We moved to that rise, she shouted over the gunfire, pointing. Her voice cut clean through the chaos, sharper than fear. Men turned, saw it, and something in her tone convinced them to trust her. One by one, they began to crawl, drag, stumble toward it, bullets snapping at their heels. She stayed low, guiding the wounded soldier forward, shielding him with her own body when the fire grew too heavy. Every step felt like borrowed time, like the canyon was counting down. At the base of the rise, she shoved him upward, hands straining to lift him toward another soldier who hauled him further. Pain tore across her shoulders, muscles screaming, but she didn't stop. Then she climbed, fingers dug into rock, boots scraping stone slick with dust. Gunfire ricocheted around her, one round tearing so close she felt the heat against her cheek. She didn't flinch, she pulled herself higher until her hands found the ledge. And then she saw him, an enemy fighter, rifle raised, waiting. Her rifle was slung behind her, useless in this angle. Her knife was faster. She lunged, steel flashing, and the struggle was brutal, desperate. He clawed at her wrist, snarling through clenched teeth, but she drove the blade deep, twisting until his body went slack. She shoved him aside, chest heaving. She hauled herself over the ledge. Gunfire roared below, but up here the battlefield shifted. Shadows scattered as she rose, her rifle snapping into place, each shot carving a path for the men climbing behind her. For the first time that night, the enemy faltered. Surprise cracked their rhythm, and in that crack she led the push, silent, relentless, until the ridge was theirs. The canyon fell quiet again, smoke drifted on the wind. Below, the squad gathered, battered but alive. She stood on the ridge, chest burning, knife still wet at her side. She should have felt relief, triumph even, but instead she felt the soldiers' words echoing inside her. They wanted you here. Her past wasn't just following her. It was hunting her.